Welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. In previous episodes we launched some rockets into the air, eventually to orbit. Then we strapped in some Kerbals to do the same. Valentina was the first, gaining crate acclaim. Flying by the moon shortly followed that, and lunar orbit thereafter. What's the use in sending only the robotic sort when there's a willing green volunteer cohort? Jeb passed by the moon and, to everyone's surprise, got home safely without so much as a wound. Wasn't a leap to consider landing therefore, so we did, 3 times or 4. Minmus was next, what a score, what a bore, so back to the moon with grand intentions in mind for adventure that was one of a kind. But not these first explorers, it would not be they, for a lander was needed, wouldn't you say? Upon a great rocket, a fluorescent steed of fire, Jeb and Bill rose forth to conquer that lofty spire. 2 times more, and Minmus too, where a bounty of science was in store. Up to the heavens where God rests his feet, a permanent dwelling was thus complete. And now we've seen other worlds, these budding spacefarers grow restless for adventure into a sky which is endless.
Well, that was weird. Some of those rhymes were dubious to say the least. I'll refrain from poetry in the future. Anyway, this is Season 2 of KSP. New mods, new save, same game. We begin with something quite extraordinary. A mission which the human space programs were bold enough to suggest, but too cash-strapped to complete. You might recognise this launch vehicle as the Saturn V analogue we used for lunar missions some time ago. This is Dres 6, an ambitious project to see Kerbals beyond the reaches of Kerbin, using the infrastructure developed for lunar flight. Today we intend to fly by Kerbin's closest neighbour, that purple menace, Eve. Once in orbit, Valentina and Bill can settle in for a wait. It is a few days before the ideal transfer window to Eve, and in that time the upper stage is to be refueled. You see, we need a good 3,000 to 4,000 meters per second to reach Eve and return, at least according to my tests. While the Dres service module has been upgraded and fitted with extra fuel, we still need an extra boost to make sure we can get there and back. Strapping SRBs to the same vehicle allowed us to haul a medium tank of fuel to orbit. This, once docked and properly attached with pumps, was plenty to top off the upper stage, giving us enough fuel to make the mammoth journey. And so, fully laden, the crew of Dres 6 plotted their course. This would be a flight of over 1.5 years, taking Valentina and Bill far further from home than anyone thought possible. Having already spent 2 days in orbit, the crew was anxious to set off. As the sun rose one final time over Kerbin, these intrepid explorers ignited their engines and set off into the darkness. It took a lot of finagling and fiddling to get not only an Eve encounter, but a slingshot which, within reasonable margins, flung the spacecraft back to Kerbin. Once plotted, however, the next manoeuvre could be performed. Stowed within those fairings, in the place of a lunar lander, is a habitation module, and some other bits which we shall return to in a future episode. Before going any further, it seemed right to me to allow my crew access to their living space. So a quick transposition was in order. Once attached, well, a few months later, a final correction burn was completed, and all the extra stuff could be detached, leaving what will be our spacecraft for the next 531 days. From this distant vantage point, the vast blackness of space seemed to swallow worlds whole. Kerbin appeared to be little more than a blue dot, a grain of dust in a sea of stars. Around that dot, the dot which Val and Bill called home, were the Moon and Minmus, places which, until recently, had seemed vastly out of reach. As Dres 6 drifted silently through the gulf between worlds, that previously unfathomable distance appeared ever smaller. Another dot was approaching, this one splendid and purple. Despite the world's regal colour, it was known that Eve harboured no life, only noxious clouds and toxic oceans. Nevertheless, there was a serene beauty to the approaching world, a kind of intoxicating draw, luring the wayward traveller to a crushing and inescapable fate, should they stray too close. As Bill surveyed the spacecraft and collected the external experiments, he felt relief that Dres 6 would be passing by at a comfortable distance. But part of him knew curiosity would not let Kerbal kind go that easily. One day they would be back to see what was below those purple clouds. He swore aloud it would not be him, but secretly envied whichever traveller would get that great honour. Live images of the purple monster were broadcast across the planet Kerbin. While grandiose speeches about the tenacity of Kerbal kind would surely be made, it was nevertheless an image which brought many questions to mind. Chiefly, if this planet, Kerbin's sister world, could be so utterly alien and inhospitable, then what chance is there to find another place like our home? With crew and science safely stowed, it was time to depart. With the main purpose of their mission complete, the crew could only settle into the long wait. The trip home from Eve would be much longer than the outward journey. Including 2 separate and significant burns, the return leg would take Dres 6 out beyond the orbit of Kerbin, almost to Duna, before descending once more to encounter the homeworld. Once their burns were complete, after 215 days in space, it would be another 321 days before Val and Bill could return home. In the next few episodes, we will see what happened while they were away. Until then, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon. I hope you enjoyed the return of KSP and indeed the return of content to the Tome of Many Things YouTube channel. We do this for a hobby, so I can't say for certain when uploads will happen, but I've got some fun things planned. Some returning series, some new things, some adaptations of previous things I and others have done. I'm hoping for a monthly upload schedule going forward, but I can't promise that. Anyway, if you like what we do here and this interests you, then please subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.